All right. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's a huge honor to be able to speak with you. And first of all, I just wanted to ask if you could do a quick introduction of yourself.
Sure. So my name is Larry Bitensky. I so I grew up in New York. Are you in New York now or in yeah, at Juilliard, right?
Yes.
Right, yeah, yeah. So when I was your age, I was at Manhattan School of Music, just down the road. Um, and How much detail would you like here? So I grew up in New York. I ended up on just my kind of the brief version. I ended up going to Skidmore College in upstate New York, and I was a music major there. And then I ended up transferring to New England Conservatory in Boston and
Hmm.
got my degree in piano. Actually, I was a classical pianist. Actually, going to a conservatory made me realize that I was not going to have a career as a classical pianist. I didn't have the chops that other people did, and I had been moving toward composition at that point anyway. And then I got a master. I went to Ithaca College in Ithaca, New York, for a master's degree in composition. And I actually moved to Ithaca, New York, and went to Ithaca College because it was close. It was where Cornell University is, and I wanted to go there for my doctorate. I knew that at the time, and um, so it was a bit of a gamble to just move to the city where I wanted to go to school. But it worked out. I ended up going to Cornell, and I got my doctorate there, um, and for the last 25 years, 26 years, so I've been teaching at a place called Center College. It's a small liberal arts college in Danville, Kentucky.
Mm,
And
amazing. Yeah, thank
and
you.
I'm finishing up there too, actually. Next year's is gonna be my last year too.
Oh, wow. Do you have any plans for afterwards?
Well, I have a another home in North Georgia, up in the sort of mountains of North Georgia, so
Oh,
I'll be moving there and living and working there. So yeah.
that's nice. Yeah. Well, thank you. And for my first question is, I contacted you initially because I heard Awake You Sleepers as a recommendation from one of my composer friends,
Oh,
and because they really liked the piece, and I liked the piece as well, and I thought it was quite kind of exotic and also very fun and beautiful. So I want to ask, like, what was the composition, like, inspiration or process behind that piece?
yeah, so maybe you don't know what the kind of the context of it, I guess. It was a commission by the Fromm Foundation at Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
Really my first big commission. I haven't had many big commissions, but that was my first one. And I had it was an open-ended commission, and I was working close. One of my colleagues and friends at Center College was a guy named Vince DiMartino, who is a really world-renowned trumpet player, who just happened to be in our small liberal arts college, and he had a former student of his, John Hagstrom, who was in the played in the Chicago Symphony, he still does, and had an idea of maybe write a trumpet concerto for him that to be performed at the International Trumpet Guild conference in Manchester, England. So this seemed like a great opportunity. Uh, so I was kind of tailoring toward that, and at the time I was pretty heavily immersed in Jewish music and kind of I grew up in a pretty observant Jewish background, and some of my earliest musical memories were synagogue and the kind of synagogue chant and things like that. So I was kind of exploring that element of myself at the time. So I kind of moved. I moved to this idea of kind of basing this piece around. Some of the liturgy, I guess. And so it's actually based on the idea of the shofar. I don't know if so the shofar is an ancient instrument.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's basically a ram's horn that
Oh,
yeah that you blow through, and like Joshua in the Bible, he blows the shofar to
oh, wow.
knock down the walls of Jericho and stuff. And it's played every year during Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year. Um, and there are so there's a strong association of this with the Jewish New Year, which has it's not just a time of celebration. I mean, it is that too, but it's a time in the Jewish tradition. It's a time of reflection and just kind of thinking about your past, how you acted the past year, what the next year is going to bring. So there's an element of kind of reckoning, I guess. Each of the movements of this is based on one of the calls of the shofar. There's something. There's a long one called. There's sorry. There's a long one called. It's called tekiah. So and then there's a short one, and then a long one going. So each of the movements is based on that little idea, but obviously it's a lot more than that. I kind of took a lot of the melodies are actually kind of related to the sort of modal melodic ideas that are in a lot of traditional Jewish music that go back, thousands of years, really. I mean, it's taken various forms as the Jewish people have moved around the world, but uh, it's uh, it's not really notated. It's essentially an improvisational kind of style. Um, and in which certain melodies or certain melodic motifs are associated with different kinds of uh, parts of the liturgy, right? So different little melodic ideas that are used in the Rosh Hashanah service. I kind of incorporated into the melodies of the song of the piece. So it was fun. It was a hard piece to do. I figured I'm writing for this guy who's in the Chicago Symphony. Well, he's one of the greatest players in the world. I'm gonna make him work. So.
Yeah, I mean, I when I listened to it, I could kind of hear that Jewish influence, like him influence. And I was just wasn't sure. And I think that's super cool and it's it's very creative and a great way to incorporate your own experience, your own culture into your music and your composition. And I just want to ask, are there any other pieces that we can listen to that also incorporate these kind of like personal like ideas or backgrounds?
Yeah, around the time too, I wrote an orchestra piece called "A Perfect Rest," which is in the same. There's sort of three or four pieces at the time that was exploring this kind of Jewish world. "A Perfect Rest" is probably the one I'm most proud of. It's a kind of a chamber orchestra. It's based on a pre-existing melody, actually. It was a melody written by a cantor in the early 20th century in response to a pogrom. Pogroms, I don't know if you know what these were. Basically, the Jewish people in Russia at the time were forced to live in these certain parts of
Yeah.
the country. They weren't allowed to have to own land, and periodically the locals would come in and wreak havoc in the communities. And this was a very big one. It was one of the I don't know the numbers to it, but it really got worldwide attention. And So the traditional song that a prayer for the dead is called El Male Rachamim, and this cantor actually basically wrote this melody, kind of based like same kind of thing, based on these traditional ideas, and I kind of took that, and it begins with a cello solo. It's kind of doing that melody, and then it becomes a kind of fantasy about that about
Oh,
that melody.
wow.
Um, yeah, since then I haven't. I guess the other piece that's gotten some attention for me is one I wrote in 2010. It's called "Fearsome Critters."
Yeah.
Uh, this is for wind ensemble. Another big commission for me. It was by the president's own U.S. Marine Band,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
which is like the best wind ensemble in the world. So this was like a huge thing for me. But this is based on it's actually for narrator and wind ensemble. So it's based on these. It's not a personal experience, but it's just a kind of fun idea. It's based on folklore really that was so lumberjack folklore. So like lumberjacks in the American tradition. I guess, guess it's sort of in the north. Um, would have these had these stories of imaginary creatures that they saw. There's one called like the hide behind. You never see the hide behind. He's just always like behind things. And there's a thing called a snollygoster and a hodag, and they're all these different creatures. And you can see, you could look them up. You can see like pretty funny cartoons about them. So this is it's been a while since I wrote this. I can't remember exactly how many. I think there's around 8 of them, or so each movement is a it's kind of like pictures and exhibition kind of thing. Each movement is a sort of picture description of each one of these creatures. So that's a fun one.
That's fun. Yeah,
Uh,
that's quite cool. And yeah, I'm gonna go listen to them after this and I'll write to you what I think.
oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and now I kind of want to go up a little bit about your journey as a composer. So you started as a classically trained pianist, right?
Yeah.
So how did you get into composition? Like what drew you to contemporary music and new music?
Um, well, it's a good question, I guess. I always wrote. To me, it never really. It just even was I like was recently found some stuff in my mom's old boxes. It was like the first piece I wrote when I
Oh.
was like 6, and it was called German Dance. I remember writing it actually, or German dance or German folk dance or something like that. And I remember one of my uncles like, "Well, is this a German dance?" And I didn't know it wasn't a German dance. I had played a little. It's a German dance, and I thought that's the kind of title that you have when you write a piece of music. So it's called German Dance. And so I kind of always was doing that on the kind of on the side. I was fortunate to have some. I had a good teacher actually at Queens College. I was at their preparatory program who helped me a little bit with some writing, and but I never really thought of it as being a composer, or like it was just something I did as part of my musical explorations and stuff. Um,
Mm.
I played violin too. I played guitar and other
Oh,
things.
wow.
Um, and so when I got to Skidmore, really, that was the big change for me. I was just there was something about playing Brahms and Beethoven was just I don't know. The whole process of it was I was looking for something new and kind of different, I guess.
Mm.
And I was fortunate to have a teacher there who put in front of me a piece by George Crumb and
Mm.
a piece by Olivier Messiaen. And
Ooh.
so like, okay, and I was just sold on this. It was so different from anything I've ever done. It just really opened me up to other worlds. And there was also a composer at Skidmore who I took a composition class and I started writing pieces that sound like George Crumb and Messiaen. And like I said, I just kind of did it and was doing it the side. When I went to the conservatory, I didn't really have a chance to or have many opportunities to really pursue that as much, and I missed it. And I kind of knew at that point that that's really the direction I wanted to move more. So, and like I said, I was pretty intimidated by how good everyone was at the conservatory on the piano, and there wasn't really. I was also looking for a kind of life where I could kind of settle down and be in one place, and not really wanting to kind of travel and live the life of a kind of roving classical musician. So um, yeah, so that got me into it. It's I well, what else would you like to ask? I can sort of
Yeah. All right. Well, that's great. And do you feel like your kind of very heavily classical background helped you in any way in composition?
um
Or you're very deep knowledge
well,
of like the instruments?
I'm sorry,
Or your
I
knowledge
couldn't
of
hear you.
like the instruments?
Yeah, the I mean, certainly with the piano. I didn't, and I played in like kind of high school orchestra. Then I played the violin. I was terrible. So, uh, but I never practiced the thing. But I did play, so I had some experience, with ensembles and just kind of a sense of what it's like to be in a, how different parts fit together. So I had some intuitive sense of that. But I didn't really do a whole lot of chamber music or that kind of thing. So no, it took some study to really get a sense of score study and studying orchestration to really get a sense of how to work with instruments, I think. Um, but it's an interesting thing that actually kind of touches on what I was just kind of talk about it. At some point, one of the things that I got into when I was well, one of the draws, I guess, to me when I was even doing those a piece like "Awake You Sleepers" was that it was based on these improvisatory traditions, right? Improvisation kind of traditions, really, and that was something I always loved. And I had done I played in like a rock band. I played a lot of Grateful Dead stuff on guitar and piano when I was in high school, and I did a little bit of jazz, not a whole lot. But I always loved I always loved jazz and other kinds of improvisational traditions in classical Indian music, classical Arabic music, and um, stuff like that. And I often tried to emulate that a lot in my writing, so I mean I hope a piece like Awake You Sleepers has that feel where it's just this kind of spontaneous, spinning out of musical ideas. Um and so that's not a particularly classical, it's something that's really not from the classical tradition, really, right? Because that classical music is so heavily, notated. Um and It got to a point actually for me in my career or my journey, I guess, as a composer that, well, I do have some chops at the piano, and so I started to actually play and do more real improvisational music, um, and I really liked it. At a certain point too, just being a contemporary classical composer these days is difficult. There's not a whole lot of orchestras who are knocking at the door to, to have your pieces played. So I was finding it pretty frustrating where I'd spend, 6 months sitting at a computer, really, fixing slurs and, and well, making all these parts and spending hours and hours and hours for not a whole lot of reward. A piece would get played once or twice and lucky 3 or 4 times and then okay. And whereas I could go to just like a local place and play get some people together and play some jazz and or whatever. And people were engaged and into it. And I don't know, the payback was more immediate, I guess, and more rewarding. So I've ended up actually kind of stopped writing classical music. I'm mostly and I got into songwriting and recording and singing and doing my guitar and keyboard, and I've kind of channeled all that creative energy in a really completely different direction in the last, like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, really.
Oh, wow, that's
Yes.
amazing. You
Yeah.
know, I'm actually in jazz improv at my school right now, and I find it quite difficult to like do improvisation as a classical trained musician. So I think it's very interesting that you're so attracted to it and you find it quite natural for you. And so I'm wondering, do you have any tips for how to like improvise?
Yeah, well, that's I mean, I teach a class in that here at Center, and
Oh,
after 20 some odd years of teaching students, and I see this all the time. You have classical musicians who are fantastic. I mean, obviously you are, I mean, you're, amazing, violinist, right? But yeah, you can see that. I see a lot of people who just kind of freeze up when they have to play something that is not on the page. And over the years, I gotta say, I've become really. I'm not sure this is advice as much as just some observations that I've seen that. I've just become really attuned to how much notated music, just the idea of that it's a visual thing, that mediates somehow the experience of from here to here to listeners. Um, and I think it does some harm, actually. I think it tends to just create a bit of a barrier between ourselves and our own innate musicality.
mhm.
So I've actually I really rethought how I do my music theory classes and how I teach things in general at Center, because I think that's what this is about for us, right? It's not like what are we going to do, this competition or that. I mean, I'm old enough to kind of feel this. I mean, when I was younger, I was obviously much more ambitious and wanted to win competitions and and stuff, but and but what this is about is we have this gift, right? We have this ability to freakishly move our fingers in certain ways that create these beautiful sounds, and we are all just kind of deeply musical as human beings, and we all have that in us. Some of us we have more talent with it, but it's just somehow who we are. And I think just kind of really tapping into that, and I think we have to do that by just feeling how music works within us. It's not and get off the page, really. I mean, I think that goes up. That's a big part of it.
Mm.
Uh, so, I would say just, just be free with it. Just play. It's a big play box. It's a big sandbox is what way I think about it. It's a place to play, and you have to be willing to just, oh, that sucks. I don't want to hear, because you're no great improviser ever says, wow, that was it. I just nailed it. That was perfect. That was a great solo. There's always moments in there where there's some self-consciousness, or, oh, I could have done that all differently, or I don't know what I'm doing right now, or, but that's the fun of it, is that it's, oh, we're on, and when you're doing improvisation, it's in real time, right? You can't, oh, I want to do that. I wish I hit a wrong note there. Or I don't like what I just did. And then boom, you're in the next bar, you're in the next chord. You don't have time to go back and fix that. So it has to it really forces you to kind of be in that musical moment and be tapping into what you have there as a, like I said, just as a musical human being, I think.
Wow. That's such great advice. Yeah, I completely agree. Um, yeah, I agree with how you can't go back and fix kind of whatever you already did. So you have to keep going and you have to just like think of new ways to, I guess, like make music, like it's so different, just playing like your practiced what's on the page and then going out and doing it compared to like thinking really spontaneously. And I think it's more musical that way, actually, more musical and more human because we can make mistakes and it's more like um it's less artificial, right? The music itself.
Uh,
Yeah.
and
And
there's this wonderful give and take with other people, which, I mean, that where it becomes. I mean, that's what I really love the most. I mean, I don't particularly like. I do it. I go up and do solo things, but with I have a band now that I've been playing for a long time, and we have just this great musical chemistry where I can I can do something, and the bass player kind of responds to that in a little way, and then the guitarist responds to that, and we have this wonderful little conversation going, and and different kind of energies and different personalities, and the moment is always going to be different because my guitar player is feeling grumpy and my bass player is feeling really excited, and I'm just, yeah, I don't know, whatever. Everyone has different things they're bringing to that actual moment, and that's super fun. I think that's really um,
that is, yeah. And what I found really interesting was that you said you switched from classical composing to a bit like songwriting and writing for other genres. So how was that? What was that experience like?
um, well, it's a little scary, yeah, because I don't. I'm in a strange position because I'm a professor of music. I have obviously credentials. I have decades of doing this stuff somehow, but I barely know how to turn an amp on. Like I don't know any of this stuff. Um, and most people my age who are in the kind of field I'm in now, have been doing it for many years, and uh, it's a little, it's a little intimidating to suddenly start just getting up on stage and playing jamming with people. But it was fun. I found I had like I said, I was writing songs, writing music. It comes pretty easy for me. Lyrics was always hard. That's still is kind of my biggest thing. So basically, I have a couple of records out. You can check them out on
All
Spotify.
right, what are they called?
Uh, so one is called "In from the Cold,"
Hmm.
and the one I'm really proud of, actually. This is the one I recently did. It's called "Happy as Larry." Yeah, that's a
All
with
right.
with me. Yeah, I did the first one. It was during COVID, and it wasn't, it was I had to record. Everyone just had to record it in their own, and then it was just basically edited to kind of put together. But um, this last one was my band, and we all knew each other, and I'm really proud of that. And Anyway, the turns out I had some ability to write some lyrics. I didn't think I did, but so that was to be the biggest challenge of it. But putting together, it's still it still taps into a lot of the kind of impulses I had as a composer, because you have to think about arrangements and how um, just I mean, there's a zillion ways. Just you have a song with chords and whatever, and a melody, but there's a zillion ways that could be arranged and put into some kind of recorded format too. So that so there's still a lot of orchestrational decisions. It's just in a different vein, you
Hmm.
know.
I see. And um, my last question is um like advice for younger students. So you were brought in, you were raised in a very musical environment. It seems like you had a lot of music around you, but then I feel like some kids who didn't grow up in the same way, like they have a lot of trouble like kind of understanding. Well, actually, it doesn't matter what the background is, but I feel like a lot of kids my age have trouble kind of understanding and opening their minds to listening new music, because there's this kind of stigma that, oh, it's atonal, it's dissident, I don't like it. That's at least that's what I've seen is like the
Yeah.
general consensus amongst kids in different programs and pre-college institutes I've been at. And so, uh, I just want to ask, do you have any advice on how to kind of start listening to more new music and how to kind of understand it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I mean, it's broad, right? And it's hard to answer because you know, the world of contemporary music now is rooted in stuff that, I mean, let's say the Rite of Spring is the is the beginning of all of everything, right? So this is 110 years, old, and you have composers as diverse as, Schoenberg and Boulez and Ligeti and lots more composers who are much more accessible, and get a lot of airtime, in symphonic programs and stuff. Um, so yeah, I don't know. It's I guess find, no, I don't know. Um, I don't know. I mean, I guess it goes back to what I was saying before. There's just I think really trying to as musical humans, and not just kind of musicians, as musical people, we hear all this stuff. One of the things I'm struck with a lot um, is as teaching is that I have students who are can be fantastic violinists. They practice, they practice diligently. They perform recitals, and they don't actually listen to classical music. I mean, that's pretty actually quite common, I
Oh,
think,
wow.
my
I mean,
experience.
yeah, I've kind of seen that, sort
Or
of.
maybe some, but not. It's not just because there's so much. We have access to so many different kinds of things, and so are the kind of demands for our attention. When I grew up, I just had albums, and I would go listen to them, and I knew them cold because I couldn't just go to my phone and say, "Oh, what's going on here?" I can't do that anymore because the phone has destroyed myself too. Um, but where's it going with this? So yeah, I think just being just being willing to kind of explore where those passions are. What are you listening to? What do you like? There's a good chunk of film music and video game music and that is and just music for media on TVs and Netflix shows that are rooted in contemporary classical music. If it weren't for Bartok, I mean, and George Crumb, for instance, I mean, the the soundscape of a lot of the stuff we hear and that we're exposed to would be different. Um, So I'm not sure I'm answering it quite. I feel like I'm just kind of rambling here, but just being open to different things and exploring those, just being open to where you feel those little connections because they're going to be there, and it's just really easy to, like you say, just kind of like shut yourself off because you don't like the sound of something, because it sounds atonal or dissonant or scary or whatever it happens to be. But it's such a big world, that there's all kinds of stuff out there to be exploring, I guess. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I completely agree. Well, that's all my questions. Thank you
All
so
right.
much for your insight. I really enjoyed listening to you talk about your experiences.
Good. Well, thank you for putting this together. So tell me about the project a little bit.
Yeah, so like I said, I found this kind of stigma towards contemporary music
Mm,
amongst a lot of pre-college and summer camps that I went to. But I had this kind of experience where I played composer Jessica Crash's piece
mm,
at a competition in DC, and I really like I love that piece so much. I kind of became enlightened by it, and I started listening to more new music because of that piece.
yeah.
And then I realized I had also kind of had that stigma that the other kids had had. Like I had always like kind of shied away from new music because I thought it was like, not my thing. But
Yeah.
I realized that it can be anyone's thing if they find what, like you said, what they feel that connection to. And so I started listening to more new music, and I thought, this is such a great genre that, everyone should have access to, and everyone should be more familiarized with, because um it's like the future of music, right? And so I started this platform more geared towards people my age, for
Right.
them to access, interviews with composers so they could kind of if there was a piece by that particular composer that they wanted to do, they could, listen to that interview and kind of talk, like, see what and learn what was the inspiration behind their works, like what was their experience like, and also to provide more resources on for kids or people like or anyone really on how to, get into new music. Um, so yeah, that's how I started.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, once you drink the Kool-Aid of new music, and somehow, yeah, why don't people like this stuff? I mean, there's so it's because it's just such a world of places you can go that just because it's so open-ended in terms of the kind of harmonic language possibilities and everything, and textural possibilities, and just sort of musical landscapes, that. Um, that's outside the boundaries of sonata form or sonata. Picking up Brahms today, Brahms sonata. I don't know why.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and it's fun. We're still alive, and you can talk to us, and and work with. I mean, working with composers and work for me, working with musicians who are doing my music is really a super fun. And
But yeah, that's the one of the most special, like, and unique parts about contemporary music is you can like talk to the composer, and sometimes you can even modify the pieces to like suit your instrument or suit your like kind of playing style, and I think that's really cool.
yeah, yeah, we do have this sort of sense somehow that the you know, the Bach partitas are sacrosanct. You cannot touch them. You can't make any kind of change to this. It's this sort of holy object that has to be recreated in this certain kind of way. And yeah, when you kind of enter the living world of or the world of living composers, that sensibility kind of drops out a little bit. And it feels more fluid and more organic, really, in a lot of ways. I think, in
Yeah,
terms of the relationship between the composer and the performer and audiences and things like that.
yeah, I agree. And thank you so much for your time. This is such a great conversation.
My pleasure. And yeah, if you have any follow-up questions or anything, I'm around. So
All right, thank you so much.
thank you, Marcy. Okay, bye bye.
Have a nice day. Bye bye.